Hello, my name is Melanie Goodfellow, and I am Screen International Senior Correspondent for Europe and the Middle East. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to our latest Screen Daily Talk. Today, we're going to be looking at Saudi Arabia's growing film business on the eve of the inaugural edition of the country's Red Sea International Film Festival. The launch of the festival on December the 6th will fall almost exactly 4 years to the day that Saudi Arabia announced the lifting of its 35-year cinema ban. And it's seen as a landmark moment for the country's burgeoning film and TV business. The talk is sponsored by the Red Sea International Film Festival. The talk will last about 30 minutes with another 30 minutes for Q&A if people want to ask questions. The panelists are very happy to answer questions, so please feel free to leave questions in the Q&A box on the Zoom. We've got a really packed house, so we're going to have a lot of rush through quite quickly with each of the people on the panel. Just to introduce them, first of all, we have Shivani Pandya Malhotra, who is the Managing Director of the Red Sea International Film Festival. Many of you on the international film circuit know Shivani as the Managing Director of Dubai. She has been with the Red Sea since the beginning and a driving force behind this first edition. Then we have Mohammed Hevzi, who is one of Egypt's best known independent film producers and screenwriters. And he is also the president of the Cairo International Film Festival. So I might pop a couple of questions to you about that too. Then we have Mohammed Al Hashemi, who is the country head of Majid Al Futtaim Leisure, Entertainment, Cinemas and Lifestyle in Saudi Arabia. Mohammed is on the panel because he is also responsible for Vox Cinemas and has driven the opening of their theatres in the country. And that's a sort of very exciting development too. Then we have two very special panelists. We have Sarah Mesfa, who is a Saudi director and screenwriter, and she will be showing two films at the festival, two omnibus films, Collective, and then a second film called, I'm sure I'm going to pronounce this wrongly again, but Karawiya, which is another omnibus festival film, which is going to world premiere at the Red Sea. And I think Becoming is going to show at Mohammed Hevzi's festival in Cairo. And then lastly, but not least, is Mohammed Al Hamoud, who we're going to call Hamoud, who told me that's probably the best way because we've got three Mohammeds on the call. And you have been a pioneer in terms of making independent cinema in Saudi Arabia. You were one of the co-founders of the Talashi Film Collective, which was making films before the ban was lifted. And you now run the Riyadh-based production house Last Seen Films. So it's great to have you all on this panel. I'm really excited to learn more because obviously for so many years we knew nothing about Saudi Arabia, so it's just a really exciting period with all these filmmakers and events coming out. So Shivani, just to get you first. We've got, it's a little under 3 weeks before the festival kicks off. And I was just wondering, are you ready? Because it's the first time that the country has held a festival of this stature.
So we're in the process of getting ready. I wish I could say we're ready. I think I did 14 years of Dubai, and I don't think 2.5 weeks before we were ready. So we're getting there. Things are in place. I mean, we're quite confident in terms of the way everything's headed. We've got our selections done. I think it's just the last bit where we're finalizing all the construction because we're doing the festival in a UNESCO heritage site. So we have a lot of different pop-up venues. So those are getting done. But I think on all the other aspects, I mean, our program's done. We're pretty much with the Red Sea soup. We've got all the elements in place. We'll be publishing our programs very soon. We've got a project market. And now we're just finalizing all the guests that are going to be coming to the festival. So in the final stages, and we're looking forward to it. So we shall be ready for everybody on the 6th of December when the festival starts.
So you said about these pop-up venues. Can you just explain a little bit more where exactly we're all going to be sort of going and spending our time at the festival?
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. So we are based in a UNESCO heritage site, which is called Al Balad. It's the old town of Jeddah. It's got a lot of history, goes back 700 years. It's now in the process of being regentrified, where they're actually investing in restoring a lot of the buildings. So we thought it's a great place to host a festival, and we've created in the courtyards and in the squares, we've actually created pop-up venues. So we're going to have a gala auditorium, which is going to be the Vox Gala Auditorium, and we're going to have cinemas that we're creating, which are the Vox theaters there. We'll also have the Red Sea Souk. So it's going to be a place where everybody is going to be based, and that's going to be our headquarters. It's in a great environment. It's very unique. It's something that people haven't seen. And I think for us, it's important to have it there to show the heritage of Saudi Arabia. And also there's got a lot of history. I think a lot of different personalities have been through Old Town, and we just felt it was a great place.
So do you know roughly how many international guests are going to attend?
We are expecting about over 1,000 international guests that'll be coming through.
Wow. I mean, that sort of leads into my next question, is that when I've been on the circuit with journalists and other film professionals, I'm still hearing from some of them a sort of reticence about attending the festival because of Saudi Arabia's human rights track record. And I mean, how do you sit with that? And that sort of, when people, I mean, I'm sure you've had a lot of pushback. So what's your response to that?
I think we've been in existence now as a foundation for 2.5 years, and I think people have seen the work that we are doing. We've been running labs. We're there for real. I think our mandate is really to support the industry. We've been looking at development. We've launched a fund. So for us, it's really important that we actually support the industry locally as well as regionally. And it's not about, I know that a lot of people have said it's a peer and how can, you're there. What is this? A big whitewash, but that's the reality of it. Is there's a true interest in making sure that there is an industry. We're supporting it. We're an enabler, and I think our focus has been on that. And I tell everybody, you come and see for yourself, because I've lived in Dubai for 21 years. Until I came to Saudi 2.5 years ago, I had a very different vision. I came in and I've seen the creative industry. I've seen the amount of talent that exists. It's unbelievable, and we're enabling everybody. It's going to change the entire region. It's going to be a complete game changer in terms of the volume of business that's going to get done. The whole region has now almost, I think, doubled or tripled in size. I'm sure Mohammed can tell you, what the predictions are and what the prospects are. So for us, it's really focusing on the talent. We're a cultural event. We're creating cultural understanding. We're, exposing the talent internationally. We're supporting the Arab region. And for us, that's what it's all about. And I think, as people come in, and a lot of you are going to come in for the first time, I think you're going to see for yourself what the reality of the situation is. And, I'm sure that people, as change is gradual, and there has been a lot of change. There's a lot more to be done. But we're getting there, and they're very positive with that. Once people come down, they'll really see for themselves, and then their narrative, not ours.
I mean, the program has an international side. I was wondering, was it subjected to much? Will the films have cuts or censorship, or were there film? Did you have to be culturally sensitive to the films that you selected?
So I think for us, yes, we have been culturally sensitive, but we're showing films in their entirety. So the entire selection, nothing has been cut. We will be presenting the films. That's very important to us, that we show the films, are complete. There's no censorship at all. And that's something that we've done. We've done it with, obviously, we've been sensitive to the environment. But the idea is we've pretty much picked whatever we've liked, and we're going to present, I think you've seen our artistic team. We are going to be looking at films that they've selected, and we're going to be presenting it to the audiences. So I hope that it's well received. And we also, I think there's an ownership on the audiences. They know what they're going to be walking into when they're going into the cinema. So it's up to them if they don't want to. And I hope that if they feel that they need to be reserved about what they're seeing, they can watch it in a different environment and not a public environment. But we are definitely showcasing films in their entirety.
And then in terms of there are 30 short films from Saudi Arabia, and I think, if I counted correctly, 7 Saudi features. And I was just wondering, their place in the program, is this a token presentation of Saudi films, or will they stand up to international scrutiny? Because the film industry is very young. So I was just wondering what your sense of that is.
Yeah, so I think there's 17 short films, and you're right, the 7 feature-length films.
Right.
There are actually some absolutely great films that have come out, and we're really, really excited about presenting them to the world. We've also got one in competition. It's not, I don't think it's, just a token where we've sort of put the films in. They're actually great films. And I'm sure a lot of them, when you come and see them, you'll realize, even in terms of production quality, they have been they're great. So I'm looking forward actually to presenting these films and presenting all the talent that we have to the international industry. I mean, what they have achieved in the last couple of years is quite substantial. Even during, the cinema industry opened, and then there was COVID. And despite all of that, we've had some great productions, we've had some great content come through. And I only see it getting better because I see what's in the pipeline, and I'm hoping in the next few years we have an abundance of different content coming out of here.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move swiftly on to Mo Hevzi. Mo, you're on the call. We've brought you onto the talk in your capacity as an international producer, because you're beginning to work with the Saudis and shoot movies there. But you're also the president of the Cairo International Film Festival. And of course, your two festivals are taking place very, very close in dates. And I was wondering how you've dealt with this. I mean, obviously, you must have been going for the same films and guests. So how have you managed to sort of overcome the closeness of the dates?
Very wisely, if I could say. Shivani and I have spoken a few times over the past months, and it's good to see that spirit of communication, open communication, collaboration between Cairo and Red Sea Film Festival. And so we've had talks about dates. We've had talks about also the common guests that are going to be going hopefully from Cairo to Red Sea. Also some collaboration with regards to the Red Sea souk, the co-production market, and our Cairo Film Connection, and other ways where, obviously there's also films. Becoming, you mentioned Becoming. Becoming is the opening film of the Horizons of Arab Cinema competition, although it's screening out of competition, but it's the opening film. And I know Sarah is one of the filmmakers that hopefully will be coming to Cairo. So it's sometimes what you may think is a bit of a threat at the beginning, when you realize that the dates are so close, could actually end up becoming an opportunity to do things, together, to do things in harmony. So I think it's going to work quite well, hopefully for both festivals. Mm-hmm. And it's good because I'm going to get to see so many friends and so many people in the Arab and the international film industry, both in Cairo and in Red Sea. So it's going to be fantastic to have that these close ties being reignited with such close proximity to each other. So I'm actually really excited about it.
So and I'm going over to your international producer's hat. During in Cannes, you announced that you were teaming with the Saudi Arabia's King Abdulaziz Center for World Culture, which is known as ITHRA, on a film called Sea of Sands. And I was just wondering whether you had any updates on that, whether it started shooting, and then I don't know whether there were other productions that you have underway in Saudi that you're able to talk about.
Well, that project is in development at the moment. And it's going to be going into production next year with the aim of releasing it in 2023. I mean, I do hope that film will end up in Red Sea Film Festival. I don't know, maybe they'll like it, possibly. But yes, I am involved in other films with Saudi talents. And I'm talking about talents in front of and behind the camera. So it's just something that I can't simply ignore, the fact that there's a huge opportunity, and there's a great market, a really big market that's opening up. And by the way, not just for Saudi films, but for other Arab films, for Egyptian films, for example. I mean, I'm sure that Orlando or other people who work closely in the distribution exhibition sector can tell you how much Egyptian films, for example, have performed so well in the Saudi box office. So when we talk about the Saudi film industry, we can't disregard the exhibition sector, which is growing in such a tremendous way. And I think about 400 screens at the moment in Saudi Arabia, and looking to rise exponentially over the coming year or two. So there's a huge benefit for us as well as Arab filmmakers. Definitely Egyptian films seem to be doing particularly well, but there's no reason why other films from other countries wouldn't also do well in the future. You also see some smaller independent films from different Arab countries that are getting some a chance to be exhibited, even if at a lower scale in terms of the number of screens, but they're still present. We were able to distribute with a Saudi distributor, for example, the Tunisian film that was The Man Who Sold the Skin, the film that was Oscar nominated, for example, and that did quite well, considering it's an independent, non-Egyptian, non-Hollywood title. So I think there are great opportunities as a producer, and also not just for me, but for other producers and filmmakers around the region that are looking to tap into this market. And obviously the possibility for co-production and the fund created by the Red Sea Film Festival, which is enormous, and I think it's going to be great help for Arab cinema as well. Obviously, it makes sense that this fund should first of all service local productions, but then also expand beyond to Arab African producers making films and limited series, etc. So episodic television. So the ambition is great, and I think the right steps are being taken. But it's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of coordination between all the stakeholders involved.
Because I mean, you've for example, you filmed Amira in Jordan. I mean, I don't know whether you've had experience now yet of filming in Saudi Arabia in terms of what its facilities like and its crews are like. I don't know how far you are down the line with your other projects. So,
well, actually, recently I've been involved in two films that were Saudi talent, but shot outside of Saudi Arabia. I as a distributor and co-producer, minor co-producer, but shooting inside the kingdom, I have not yet done it, and I'm looking forward to doing it next year with Sea of Sands, the project that we've announced, and other projects as well. But you were telling me to put on my producer hat, so I'm going to the Red Sea Film Festival with Amira. I'm going to the Red Sea Film Festival with Hoda Salon and Feathers. So I mean, these are. It's definitely for us. We're very excited to finally to be able to show films to Saudi audiences, films with different from different scale, different types of films, and I'm not talking about only purely commercial Egyptian films, but films that are very different. So so I think that's that's we're gonna discover really quickly what that's how that's gonna grow over the coming years.
So, I mean, I think that's a good point to go over to Mohammed Al-Hashemi, because Mohammed, it's great to have you on the call, because you've been overseeing the launch of the Vox cinemas in Saudi Arabia. And so I was just wondering whether you could talk to me a little bit more about that, about how many theaters and how many screens you have currently in Saudi Arabia.
Thank you. So as we stand today with the latest opening we had in Jubail almost a few weeks back, we stand with 15 locations operating in 6 cities with 154 screens that have been opened in the past almost 2.5 to 3 years, given the fact we had as well the COVID period in between. So we stand as the largest exhibitor in screen count and market share as well within the market in Saudi. Now, the experience itself of opening cinemas in Saudi, it might sound easy. It might sound like a market with no cinemas, so just come and open. But it's more of an educational and social engineering exercise where we have to open a cinema, you have to open the industry, you have to allow and enable people to go, content to come, and just be the middleman, more or less, to get that social behavior happening within a country that had a cinema ban for almost 35 to 36 years in the country. Now, this is one. The second thing, given the fact we are operational as well in almost all the regions surrounding Saudi, we have seen the Saudi consumer coming to our cinemas in Dubai, in Bahrain, and in Egypt as well. Yet we have not operated in their country itself. So operating within Saudi has as well given us an eye-opener learning on how to deal with the consumer in Saudi, whether there were Saudis or non-Saudis, within the land itself. It is a beautiful experience. It is something that we have learned a lot from, and it always keeps us on our toes to always provide the best, be the best, and always be up to date to give the best to the Saudi consumer within the country.
So I've been to the Vox, those amazing Vox multiplexes in Dubai, which are, very, very luxurious. I mean, how do the complexes that you've built in Saudi compare? Are they as up to date? Are the screens as good? Is it the same experience?
You remind me of one beautiful experience that I personally didn't believe in, but when we had to do it, we then said, "Oh wow, what is this?" So you mentioned something so important. The beautiful multiplex in Dubai that is luxurious. And we have one of our iconic cinemas in Kingdom Tower. And I remember when we took the place and we decided to open a cinema, there was one thing that I had been told, build something that no one else have experienced or seen. So we built a boutique cinema that is considered the most luxurious cinema in Saudi, with even golden plated food in the menu itself. Today, that cinema is the highest and most luxurious cinema in Saudi, and within our portfolio itself, it is an experience. It's not just going to the cinema is not just about the movie. You can watch the movie in so many places. As Shivani said, if you don't want to watch the movie in a public space, you can watch it in a different platform or maybe a private space. But going to the cinema is more about the experience. It's more about the food. It's more about how you enjoy, how you go into the cinema, how you experience the movie, how you listen, how you watch, how you just escape what you have in life and just be in that movie and then go back to life. It's more about the escape experience. It's more about what comes with the escape experience itself.
But I heard that, I mean, I think I was speaking to somebody else at Vox, and they told me that after the first wave of COVID, when cinemas started opening again, you were opening them 24 hours a day. How did that work? Did people come to the cinema at 3 a.m. in the morning, and are they still open on these hours, or what's happened since?
Okay, so we are still open on those hours, but when we reopened, given the fact we are the largest exhibitor in the region, we took the initiative to re-educate people on going back to the cinema, and going back to the cinema doesn't mean it's a scary experience. It's a safe environment. We didn't think of it as purely commercial. We thought about it as a learning curve, an educating curve to bring people back after almost 3.5 months of lockdown and shutting all commercial activities. There were no cinemas, and then you come and tell me go to the cinema in a closed environment while COVID is just there. It was more about educating people to go back with safety. Now, when we talk about 24 hours, we are here to create great moments, and creating a great moment shouldn't be from 9 till 2 a.m. It can be at 3 a.m. And we have most of those frontliners who used to work from the morning till like 1 or 2 a.m. They want to have a life. They want to watch a movie. They want to maybe escape the COVID reality and just enjoy a movie for 2 hours, having a popcorn and Maltesers, and then going back to reality. Why not offer those people? They have helped us. We are all alive. We're all healthy. I think that was a beautiful move. Yes, it was something to create great moments, but it was a beautiful move as well to get the momentum back into cinemas. We can see today that people go to the cinemas, the occupancies have gone up, the content lineup has gone back into more or less normal lineups, and it required us and others as well to collaborate to bring confidence back to the industry.
So, I mean, so we've talked about the whole cinema going experience, but obviously, clearly the films are important. So I just wanted to understand, in terms of programming, what kinds of films are working in Saudi?
I would say the Saudi market is more or less mainly influenced by international studio titles, with the exception of Arabic content. When we talk about Arabic content, we talk mainly about Egyptian content and then the local produced content in Saudi. It's like any normal market. International titles hit and they get the audience that we expect and people expect when it comes to content. So it's more or less a predominant international titles market, and we then tailor each and every single location, like in any other market we operate in. If you go to Mall of the Emirates, you might have more or less all the movies, while in other cinemas that we operate in within Dubai, you might have a more community-focused content that cater to that community itself.
I mean, and what's the how do you deal with censorship? I mean, we all read the stories last week about the Eternals not being allowed to play in Saudi. I understand that's correct. How do you deal with that? Because that's a huge title, and I'm sure people wanted to see that film.
See, that's a huge title, yes, but it's again any country that we operate in. You have to respect whatever the country looks and believe is the best for their people. And we follow in every single country we operate in, we follow whatever the government mandate, and we respect it. And it actually is something of benefit to the community, to the society, and to us as well as operators.
Because the film was able to screen in UAE though.
Definitely, yes, definitely.
So it's still played, but just not Saudi. So I mean, and then in terms of like local content, because obviously this talk is about the Saudi film industry. I mean, is there any appetite for Saudi films, or film? Has anybody produced a film that can work in a cinema yet that you've tried out?
It's a beautiful question, and I would like to maybe give an example on two case studies that we have. Back in 2018, we signed up with Mircot to distribute Masamir. Masamir is one of the locally produced contents in Saudi. So the reason why we use this as an example of a case study is basically Masamir was filmed as a short series episode for almost 120 episodes on YouTube prior to cinema ban being lifted in Saudi, and it had more than 1 billion views on YouTube. So the question was, why not to get those 120 episodes and then recreate them on the big screen and have it as a movie for people to just enjoy in a cinema environment? So when we got it into the cinema as distributors, it actually worked. And it was a good example for one of the first Saudi local content to be featured on the cinema. A second example of a movie we distributed is Born a King, and it talks about King Faisal. King Faisal is very well known in Saudi, yet is also very well known within the GCC region itself. And it was a good case study to evaluate how Saudi local content will react within Saudi itself, and then within regional markets. So we've seen it on the big screen in cinemas for almost 13 to 14 weeks in Saudi, and for up to 9 weeks in Dubai.
Right.
And it's not a locally UAE produced movie, it's a Saudi movie.
Right. So just, I mean, one last question before I move on to Sarah and Hamoud. Do you have, I mean, I've heard some crazy projections for the box office, the expected box office for Saudi Arabia. What's your latest estimate for Vox when you look at that market? And has it already overtaken the Emirates now as a theatrical market?
See, from a global box office, yes, it competes eye to eye, if not more than with the UAE. But it has as well its own specifications and things to look into. It's an emerging market, and you can't compare an emerging market with a mature market like Dubai. This is one. The second thing, today where we stand, it's a non-measurable market given the disturbance that happened. Dubai opened up, even with the airport back in May 2020, while Saudi opened just recently with one partial lockdown, commercial lockdown in February 2021. It has its own specifications. We believe that the market will go back to normal within 2022 to 2023, but still it is an emerging market that is, from a global box office, looks into eye to eye with a mature market like Dubai.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now we're going to move on to the two Saudi filmmakers who we hope are going to start filling cinemas one day with their films. So Sarah, it's great to meet you here on Zoom. You're involved in 2 films, as I said in the introduction. You've got Becoming, which is going to world premiere, as Mo Hevsi said, in the Arab competition. It's not in competition, but it's the opening film. And then you've got the Quaraya, which is going to world premiere in Red Sea. And I was just wondering how you're feeling ahead of these two screenings. I mean, what's the sensation for you as you get ready for these 2 feature films to meet their audiences?
Well, that's the first time I'll be screening like 2 feature films. It's not like the length of the film is not, mine are not features, it's shorts. This is the first time.
Within the film, yeah.
In a larger audience. I've screened my film in Cairo last year. I'm expecting the same energy. I'm expecting same thing. But for Red Sea, I have no expectation. I'm very excited, but this is what I'm going to figure out. But I'm definitely looking forward to it, because when I screened my film in Jeddah, that was one of my best screenings, because it's around your family, it's around the crew worked in the film, the actors and the actresses and the crew members.
So did you start making, can you just talk to me a little bit about your career trajectory? Did you start making films before the cinema ban was lifted, the announcement was made that it was going to be lifted, or did you start afterwards? How did you get involved in cinema?
I was already studying that, and it started 2016. Well, studying cinematic art requires you to make a short film in every course. So I started making these short films, and they were like these personal films, the docu-fiction films. I document myself daily. So I've started making these shorts before having cinemas in Saudi Arabia. Then by the time the ban was lifted, I was making my first short, which is The Girls Who Burned the Night. By the time I finished.
Just quite pushing boundaries in a way for the story it tells about these teenage girls who go a bit crazy when they're not allowed to go to the grocery store. I mean, did you feel when you were making it that that you were pushing boundaries, or were you scared that people might be surprised by the story you were telling, or was it just totally natural to you that you were making that story?
It was natural. I've never thought that people would react like they wouldn't accept it in a way. I've never thought of that, and I've never gotten this reaction that we don't like what we see when you're pushing boundaries. I think it's just a simple story that tells a lot about anger and crossing some lines.
And I mean, but just going back to your original idea about going into cinema and studying it, but why did you do that? Because at the time there was no way to show your movie or your films at home. So why did you do that? I'm just
I have no idea. I wouldn't know to do. I wouldn't do anything else. I wouldn't know how to do it. If it wasn't for cinema, I wouldn't do anything else. So
right. So I mean, and one other question that we discussed this beforehand, but I mean, when I speak to people about the Red Sea is really getting behind the whole idea of female filmmakers, and it's part of their branding and their advertising. And a lot of people outside of the region, when I talk to them about this, say, but it's just a PR stunt. It's like whitewashing. I mean, how do you feel about this? You're showing your films there, and you're part of this. So do you feel that's the case as a filmmaker? And how do you feel as a female filmmaker in Saudi Arabia and your opportunities and you know what you can say there?
You hear this thing a lot. It happens in everything. It happens with brands, it's institution. You hear the same thing. They're only doing this for the public relation. And I understand some institutions, some brands, they do that. I'll give an example. There is this brand, whatever this brand is, they're making shirts about women is the future. Does that bother me? No. When does it bother me? When this same brand, slave women, like working 24 hours to make these shirts, some women, then they're saying they're supporting women. So whenever there is contradiction, then this is where I wouldn't like it, or I would say we should change that. But other than that, public relation wouldn't bother or hurt anyone. And here I am making like two films and screening it in the first edition. So we'll see that. I think in the future, these things will show more if we're continuing in the same level, pushing more or going forward or going backward. I think we'll see.
Right. Yeah. So it'd be the proof will be what happens in the coming years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know.
So are you working, you've got these two films coming out, as you said, they're omnibus films, so you have made segments in those films, but have you got other projects? Are you working on a feature film idea that you've got in the woodwork that you can talk about? Or
well, I'm developing my first feature because these things takes time, so I'm planning to shoot my third short as well very soon, within the next year.
but no feature film planned just yet.
It's in the development phase.
Oh, true as well. Okay. And then just, I mean, where would you, when you're sitting here now, where would you like to see the Saudi film industry in 10 years' time? What would your dream scenario be?
I'll talk as a filmmaker. As a filmmaker, you would definitely want to see more established industry, that you don't have to worry about finding enough crew members to make this film. You don't have to worry about getting fund. You don't have to worry about distributing your film, the whole process of the film that goes normal, and see. You worry about actually how do you let the story out of yourself, not how do you technically make it. That's what I would love to happen.
And so, Hamoud, just going on to you. Thank you, Sarah. So I'm sort of amazed when I was reading your CV about how you set up the Talashi Film Collective, and you were making short movies that were then getting shown in festivals in the region, but could never be shown in Saudi. And it's the same question that I put to Sarah. It's like, why did you do that when you couldn't necessarily show your movies at home, and it was something that was banned? I was just wondering what drove you to take that course.
I think I liked movies. This is the simple answer. Maybe pissing my parents, I don't know. Like anyone young, because you want to do something. Because when I started involved in making films, I was in my early 20s. Probably I would have been writer, or maybe I would have been singer or whatever, like any sort of artistic expression back in the day. But cinema was the closest thing. And also sometimes coincidence, because through online platforms like Saudi back in the day, in the early 2000s, internet forums was the main, basically the main gathering or the main public space to, if you have a hobby, if you like something. So actually I got into filmmaking through cinematic forum, and this is how I met the Talashi members. This is how we started. And it happens that Dubai Film Festival, or the early version, the Gulf Film Festival, was still in the launch in 2006, I guess. It was Musabaqat Aflam al-Imarat, I think. It was the Emirati film festival, but they allow like some Gulf countries. And one of our friends, he experimented with this camera and he made this short, and we didn't even know what a short film is. And then we start going to these festivals. And by 2007, I made my first short. And then in 2008, I established Talashi Film with other filmmakers in Saudi. But yeah, I didn't know what's the reason. I didn't have Super 8 when I was young. It wasn't that story. It just a simple way of just doing something different, I guess.
And then so you went and studied cinema in the US, is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, I did MFA in film in San Francisco, and I went back maybe 2015. Since then, I was back and forth from the US and Saudi. I was freelancing mainly, and then after a while, I started, and by 2017, I launched Last Scene Films, it was still like a very small, it's like freelance work, but now legally I can get paid of making films.
Right.
And yeah, I developed like a few titles, one feature and a few shorts. And eventually it was happening actually. Even like when I developed my first feature, Last Visit, we were actually about to shoot before they allow cinema.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and then we get the fund from ISRA. And when we get to the fund, actually there were no cinema in Saudi. And then we have to actually delay the process of the filming, because now there's a distribution factor on the film, because it was like just a grant, you make a film, show it like in neighboring countries, film festival, etc., etc. And then it was like the process was actually too quick. Sometimes I can't even imagine how fast it was. I'm talking like two or 3 years ago. We're just starting doing these feature. Now we have like an actual, not industry, but now we are talking about international film festival, which is like, I couldn't even imagine that would happen someday here.
So, but how are you finding the talent? I mean, whenever I like start looking at filmmakers or trying to do like talent lists, it's just crazy. There's so many young people with great ideas coming out of Saudi. But how do you find talent? Are there people you've worked with for a long time, or
Actually, one of the new talents I like is Sarah Misf, for example. Effet, for example, Effet University. I mean, in Saudi now, it's sadly actually enough, we don't have that much like cinema lovers or cinema like centric. Most of them now, if they like to do anything, they just go to corporate or making ads, except maybe in Jeddah because of Effet University. Even when I made like my 2 short on my feature, actually I recruit a lot of graduates from Effet University, and now I'm happy with the Red Sea Film Festival. I'm hoping to like cultivate this community-based. Most of the filmmakers, back to your question, I work with actually like old colleagues who we really trust each other vision, some technical challenges which we can resolve it through. Again, I agree with Sarah, some technical difficulties. We solve it through bringing filmmakers from maybe Egypt, Tunisia, Jordan, like especially technical crew. But in terms of director, I think we have young talents, also writers, but we have really lack of technical film, like cinematographer, sound, post-production, editors, almost not a single one professional, you can find in Saudi.
So, I mean, it's a question also just for both of you, actually, going back to, because I think you both mentioned it to me in the past. I was wondering, Haifa Al-Mansour is one of the people who's going to get a lifetime achievement and be tributed at the Red Sea. And I was wondering whether she had any impact on your decisions to go into cinema with Wajah, whether that had been a moment for you or not. I don't know, Hamoud first and maybe Sarah afterwards.
Actually, I knew of Haifa first when she was making her shorts at, again, the Gulf Film Festival, the early version. Then she had this documentary. It was like all over the news. It was controversial about her, the religious police and so on. So she's definitely one of the pioneers that, I know of even before making Wajda. And actually I saw Wajda in a film theater in San Francisco, in a commercial film theater. And I was so happy. I couldn't imagine, just to go to the theater and to the cinema. And it made actually really well. It stayed almost for 2 months in the cinemas. So she's definitely in that sense, regardless of the topics of her films, as a filmmaker, she's definitely one of the pioneers, and even in the early stages of cinema, when I was making films, I was thinking of her as a filmmaker.
And as Sarah, are you able to? So I was just wondering, because you mentioned her as well when we were talking.
I wanted to be a filmmaker before Wajda came.
Right.
But when I saw the trailer, I remember when I saw the trailer, I didn't even watch the film, but I was like, okay, there is this door that I can actually knock and open. If she can make that, I can make that as well. And definitely growing up, especially in the Middle East, you don't see a lot of female filmmakers. You don't know about them. You most see like male filmmakers, or like the news, you don't know about it. And especially like I grew up in an environment that you either see like commercial films or films that talks about women by a male gaze. So you don't know much about that. So when I saw that, definitely that changed something.
So I'm going to just go over to some of the questions now that have been sent through to me. I'm just trying to just go back through. Oh, hold on 1 minute. Oh, hold on. Might just have to look here. I'm going to look in here, sorry. So I'm going to, so I've got, we can't answer all of these questions because we don't have experts for all of these questions on the panel. But I have one. So I think this can go to Sarah and Hamoud. I've got one, the person hasn't named who they are, but they said, for the filmmakers, do you feel any pressure on your freedom to tell particular stories from the Saudi state or from anywhere else? So do you censor yourself at all when you make your films? Sarah, I'll ask you first.
I do make my films and I don't know what's the limit, but I just make them. I don't actually think about it. When I write a script, I don't think of if I should take this out or how should I present this. I just make them and I'll see, because it's an immersive cinema. You'll just see what's can be out and what not. So until this moment, I did not face anything. I don't know.
And Hamoud, for you?
Not at the moment, not yet. All the films, all the ideas actually I'm developing, or even the film I developed already and I released one in the cinema. I haven't had any issues. There is some self-censorship which happens to any artist, any filmmaker, and I guess it happens everywhere. There is some certain issues, you know, we are not making movies to just provoke. But in terms of topics, definitely all the films, I mean, even some of it, they get actually funds, local funds, and some like from outside, they might consider it, oh, this is like a daring idea, but it passed. And also there is different kind of censorship. We have like funds, usually they are more flexible, but then when you go to the cinema, actually I saw Saudi film, Shams al-Ma'arif, which is now on Netflix. It's actually, I was surprised when I saw it in the cinema.
Which film? Sorry, which film is that?
Book of the Sun. The topic, in the subtext, even the vulgar language, I was surprised when I saw it. And I think even in neighboring countries, maybe you cannot show some of the language in that movie. And also this movie, because of that movie, now it created a lot of new filmmakers that they have this kind of, there is a gap, you know, that there is, you can say so much more than Shams al-Ma'arif or around Shams al-Ma'arif, which is actually, I was surprised even to see it in the Saudi cinema.
Right. I mean, when I've interviewed Haifa al-Mansour, sometimes, I think she's sometimes said, it's not even a question of the authorities censoring you. Sometimes you just have to be sensitive to people, to society, to the population who might not be ready to see certain stories. But I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know whether either of you feel that or not.
I think that happens everywhere. I guess that's my point. Now, even if you are in the States, even if you are in Europe, there's sometimes, whatever topic, maybe you have some issues actually from different parties, different ideology, different. So sometimes it comes from within the filmmaker itself. You know what you could say, how you represent minorities, how you represent women. So all these topics, it has to come within. So far, I haven't had issues, and I agree with Mr. Hishami. We're still emerging cinema. We don't know how it's. In the next few years, we will know much more. You know. In terms of censorship, in terms of what topics, even the society, they will be, you'll be surprised. They might actually have censorship from something you cannot even imagine. You know, for example, tribalism. Maybe it's more sensitive if you talk about it than maybe sexuality. I don't know.
Tribalism.
Right, yeah. Like so there is some topics we didn't know actually. It hasn't been tested yet in cinemas. Right.
So I'm going to go through the rest of these questions. So there's a question here, Shivani, sort of moving on from what Hamoud said, and it's in the question box. And they're asking, well, I mean, obviously there was the controversy over Eternals, and they're asking, will there be any LGBTQ guests or participants at the Red Sea Film Festival?
I think for me, the answer is, you know, very obvious. I think it's a very strange question. Of course, I mean, nobody is making any differences on people's orientation, and I keep getting this question, and I just think it's a ridiculous question to be asking in this day and age. So yeah, yes, we will. I mean,
fine, fair enough. And then Mohammed Al-Hashemi, I have another question for you, asking, what are you, given that the cinema was banned for 35 years, what are you doing at Vox, specifically doing at Vox, to change public behavior and encourage people to engage with cinemas after all of this time? Maybe you don't have to, I don't know, but you know.
See, apart from getting the right content into Saudi, is as well recreating that industry by the local content, by the experience itself, and by making it part of people's social routine. Going to a cinema shouldn't be something out of a routine. It can be one of the weekly things that you do, or one of the monthly things that you do in a normal life. Yeah.
are you doing any sort of specific events like Q&As? Do you get directors in? Do you do events around issues? Do you do some of that type of stuff?
Yeah, definitely we do. We do premieres. We have premieres. We have themed movie nights, as an example. It's more about tailoring it and trying to make it more personalized for people, to have it more accepted and more as well wanted by people to go. Let alone the asset itself. So if you go to one of the cinemas that we have in Hayel, it's not just a cinema, it's a cinema with a bowling where people can enjoy bowling and then go to the cinema, or enjoy bowling after coming out of a cinema. And the first cinema that we have opened in Saudi, in Riyadh Park, it's a cinema with a family entertainment center and a bowling and restaurants. It's more of an experience by itself. It's not only about the premieres that we do, it's not only about the content that we get, it's more about the experience itself. It's not just a cinema, it's a cinema with an experience.
Okay. So there's another question here. We don't really have anybody on the panel who could specifically answer this question. It's a question from John Dirty saying, in growing the film industry in Saudi Arabia, you mentioned production and exhibition. What does the future of film education look like, and how does it fit in with the long-term goal of industry expansion? We don't really have anybody from that sector here, but Sara and Hamoud, obviously you're young filmmakers. Sara, you went to, you studied film. What was your experience? And do you feel like the film schools are expanding or training is expanding? And even Hamoud, maybe when you're looking for, you were talking about there not being enough crew maybe and stuff like that.
So there is like the Ministry of Culture last year, I think they opened scholarships for filmmaking, music, art, and a lot of these things. And I've heard about universities that are planning to do filmmaking. Now the only thing in Saudi is IFET is only for women to study this major. But I see a lot of planning towards an educational way of entering the cinema industry.
So for example, like I do see there are like workshops sometimes and one-off events that people attend. It seems to be quite
a lot of workshops, actually a lot of workshops.
So like done by ITHRA, or sometimes like NBC, I think has something that, I mean, I do see there's a lot of stuff, but there's no official, apart from IFAT, there's no official school as yet.
Yeah, no, there is a lot.
And Hamoud, do you have anything to add to that? Because you studied in the States, but I don't know if you feel like it's changing now.
Yeah, I mean, IFET, which is, by the way, it's a female-only school, and it is the only filmmaking school actually in the country. It's been that for a while. We haven't yet any film school, an actual film school, which is actually to start an industry, you definitely need to have a film school. For example, in Egypt, you have like a generation of filmmakers coming out from the High Institute of Cinema in Egypt. Same thing in NYU, Tech, like or USC. Like if you have a film school, there you have like a few generations, and then you have like every now and then you will have young talent coming fresh from school. And this is, you don't have to worry to creating like a community of films. I mean, a community of filmmakers with like cinema lovers, etc. I think now definitely with expanding in cinema, I'm sure within 5 years we'll have like an actual film school in the country, which is definitely important. Yes.
Okay, and Hamoud, while you're here, another question, and maybe Mohebzi as well, have a question saying, how easy do you find it to collaborate with other nations, both inside and out of the Gulf region? So maybe Hebzi, just to get you to come on, Hebzi, you were talking about working with Saudis and Egyptians. Is that happening yet, where you've got co-production? I mean, obviously you're working on Saudi productions, but are you seeing like wholesale collaboration on that way yet?
Yes, I am seeing that. I've heard of several projects that are Saudi Egyptian projects. There are other Arab co-production initiatives that are happening. I've been I did a co-production with Jordan this year. Amira is an Egyptian Jordanian Palestinian co-production, and with Saudi Arabia, yes, I can definitely see things in development. I haven't seen anything actually released yet that is purely Egyptian Saudi, but I think that's I don't think there's anything at an official level. I mean, there's no co-production treaty. There's nothing of that sort. But I think on the companies level, I see a lot of people trying to, to make that happen.
I mean, sort of linked to this question, do you, I mean, I know it's happening more in television now, but do you see a situation where you could be like mixing Emirati, Egyptian, Saudi talent on the big screen? Do you think that could work, or is that still complicated? You might end up with like the Euro pudding like we had in Europe for a while.
Well, I've done that before with the film called From A to B, which had a Saudi character, an Emirati, and a Syrian character and an Egyptian character as the main characters. But yes, I could definitely. I mean, it's television is kind of leading the way in that. But I think that in cinema, it has to be organic. I don't think it's a good idea to set off with the mindset of I just want to make a film with 3 characters from 3 different countries. I think this it has to serve the story. I think the story has to be designed in a way whereas it feels organic and not contrived and authentic. So I definitely see more of that happening in cinema, but we haven't seen much of it on the screen yet.
Right. And then I've just got a question maybe for Mohammed Al-Hashemi. Is there a market for non-Hollywood independent foreign language films in Saudi Arabia? So do you think we're going to start seeing French movies or Parasite or playing on screens, or maybe they already are in Saudi?
They are already in Saudi. We had an experience with a Korean movie, and surprisingly enough, the Saudi nationals that are fans of Korean movies was beyond what we expected as a company and what I personally expected to happen in Saudi. I was comparing it with us in Dubai, but surprisingly enough, there is, and especially with certain Asian content or certain European content, apart from Hollywood basically, and the general Bollywood content that we get into Saudi, but there is.
And then there's a question, thank you. And there's a question that keeps coming sort of up. There's sort of lots of the questions along these lines is maybe for Sara and Hamoud and maybe Shivani, what is the one misconception about the Saudi industry that you would like to see corrected? It's not my question, it's a question that's out there. Is there anything that you get asked repeatedly and you would like people to understand? Sara?
I think there is a lot. I can't come up with something now, but I personally, I'm not interested to correct any misconception. We all have misconceptions, and these things comes with days. You fix it with days. It gets to you naturally. You don't push for it so hard. You don't have to prove anything. At least not me.
I don't know if Hamoud has got anything to add on that.
It's exactly what she said. Sometimes you go to a Q&A, you have to explain the history, the historiography of Saudi, and it's not your job. You just want to talk about the film from filmmaking perspective, which is rewarding. This is why you want to be like a filmmaker. I know I'm a Saudi filmmaker, I'm an Arab filmmaker, etc., etc. But yeah, I hope like one day just we talk like about cinema or the subject matters and all that.
To handle the film, not as a case. As an emotional journey, and not only seeing it as coming from this country and not seeing it coming from a woman, because once you call the film directed by a woman, then you're not thinking this is a normal thing. You're already labeling it. So just like looking at the film as a film.
Well, I think that's a good point to draw this conversation to an end, unless anybody has any burning thing that they want to say before we close. I'd just like to say thank you to everybody, Shivani, Mohevzi, Mohammed Al-Hashemi, Sara, and Hamoud. It's just been great talking to you. There were a lot of you on the talk, so we had to jump backwards and forwards between different subjects. I'm really sorry if I haven't addressed all the questions in the Q&A. The recording for this Screen Daily Talk will go up on Screen International tomorrow with a write-up. So if you want to listen to it again, please do. And I look forward to seeing, hopefully, most of you in Jeddah very soon. So thank you very much for listening in. Bye.
Thank you.